Hi guys, my name is Charlotte and I live in San Diego, California, about 10 minutes east of the beach in the suburbs. I'm a freelance graphic designer and more recently I'm a yoga teacher. I don't really like to call myself a yoga teacher because there's so many of them. I consider myself more like a yoga enthusiast. Kind of everything I do in my life kind of ends up revolving around yoga in one way or another. A lot of the graphic design I do ends up being for different yoga studios or schools, and a lot of the marketing that I do, and so everything I do is kind of based around that. And that kind of leads into what I was thinking about, like what I could offer to this community. I've never really been a part of a community like this that Joshua is envisioning, and I'm really excited to learn more. And I've really been thinking about what it is that I could contribute to the community. And for myself, my yoga practice and kind of just like my mindfulness practice, I guess you could call it, is sort of like therapy for me. I've suffered from some depression and anxiety, and I've been around quite a few people who have suffered really intensely from mental illness, one of them being my mother. And so I'm very passionate about taking care of your mental health. I think that it's a huge part that is missing in our country. There's not a lot of emphasis on people really taking care of their mental well-being, and there's always been this philosophy with like Western medicine of kind of just fixing something with a pill really quickly. And I've seen this all firsthand for me, and so it's a very emotional subject. But it also has been a motivating factor for me to really kind of try to understand people. And I've found that that's when it comes to like teaching yoga and also with my graphic design work, because I do like branding for different companies, a lot of it is like getting into people's minds and trying to understand them. And I realized when I was thinking about that, it really kind of came back to like what I would envision in a community as being a successful community, is trying to understand people. I think so many of the things that go on in the world and the violence and just destruction has to do with miscommunication and people not truly trying to understand each other. We have a way of like, we're specifically right now, we're so divided and people want you to choose a side, and it's very like extreme, and I'm like someone who's kind of in the middle trying to like look at both sides of the story or the situation and truly understand each side and understand, well, why is this person acting in this way, like where did they come from and what is their story. And not that there's an excuse for acting a certain way, but I think if we took the time to truly try and understand each other, I think we would maybe live in a really different world. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to, specifically in our society, everyone's in a rush, everyone's in a hurry, they don't have the time to talk to you, they don't really care how you're doing, you know, they ask how you're doing, but it's kind of just like, just to ask. And I more recently started to really try and slow down and really like connect with people and ask like, how are you actually? Like, because maybe you're not well, and like that's okay. And to not feel judged for not feeling okay. I think a lot of times we feel this need to like be really fake and act as though we're fine. And I think if we were to live in a community where we really emphasized people like really being happy, like genuinely, and if we, you know, place that above maybe how much money you make or how much power you have, we could probably create a very different reality for ourselves. And as I was thinking about this, I kept coming back to thinking about children, because I feel like children have this way of just like dreaming and being in the moment and being really present and not really, you know, saying what's on their minds, but not like coming from a judgmental place like a lot of adults do. And I started to think about how like building a community centered around like really including children in the conversation and actually really like learning from them, because I think we say that sometimes, but we don't actually practice it. A lot of times we think children, you know, they're silly and their opinions don't matter, and because they have all these crazy thoughts and they dream so big, like that's just not realistic, because, you know, we live in this serious world and you're supposed to be mad and you're supposed to hate your job, and it's like these social norms that we've just become so accustomed to. And I do it myself, and I've been trying to kind of like rewire my brain a little bit and start to think about like, how can I start to think about things differently and come back to like how I would dream as a kid or how I would interact with people. And like, we envy the way that kids are so happy and free and they don't care and they say whatever they want all the time and they dress how they want because they're allowed to, because they're kids. But imagine if we could live in a community where adults could do that too, and we could dream big and we could be happy and we wouldn't be so bogged down by whatever society has placed on us and whatever box they've put us in and whatever labels we need to have. And so I think as far as like my skills and what I can like contribute to a community is, for myself, what has helped me is, like I said, my yoga practice and really just bringing awareness to my inner teacher and sitting with myself and slowing down and like really working on loving myself. And so I think bringing that energy into a community and making that a priority, and whether it's a group yoga practice every day or just like you sit in silence for a day, or you know, having meals together, whatever that looks like for you, but sharing something with people and really taking the time to communicate with them and like ask them how they are, and making that mental health really a top priority of the community. Because if people aren't doing well and they don't love themselves, how is the community going to thrive as a whole? And I really would love to put a huge emphasis on like art and music and creative expression, because I think specifically in schools, like for kids, a lot of that has kind of been like on the back burner, and they don't really, you know, kids get labeled with ADD if they can't like concentrate very much, but maybe they're really good at music. So I think a different way of educating children and having them be more connected to nature and having them feel like they can really express themselves and wear what they want, and you know, not have to wear pink because they're a girl and blue because they're a boy. Like just getting rid of all of those things that like we were brought up with that are still really ingrained in us, but giving children, specifically children, the freedom to express themselves however they want to, because it starts with kids. And that education in the first 5 years of their lives, they are like sponges and they will absorb everything. And what they learn in those years is really a huge factor in how they're going to act as an adult. Not that adults are totally unfixable, but I think we're harder to train. And so being a part of this community and the potential of living in a community feels really inspiring to me, because kind of what I already mentioned about where we are in the world right now, it can feel really scary and restricting, but I think it can also be kind of exciting and inspiring, because you can look at it as an opportunity to create something totally new. I think a lot of things are being broken down and a lot of people are being broken down, and we've been forced to look at ourselves in a totally different light. And so I think if there was ever a time to envision what, you know, your ideal future would be, I think it would be now, and to kind of like find those people who have the same kind of motivation and who feel inspired and feel drawn to, you know, an alternative way of living and existing. And I think humans are inherently like, we're meant to be happy, we're meant to thrive, we're meant to be living in nature, with the cycles of nature, with animals, with children, like everything very like connected. And specifically like for myself, living in the suburbs, everyone's so separate. Like our neighbors, we don't even really talk to each other, and it's such a bizarre thing, and I've been so used to it. But it's like I've experienced sometimes like working at music festivals where you eat every meal with people and you create things together, and everything you do with people, and every, you know, your success is based upon creating something for a greater good rather than just for money or for power. And I think that's a main factor, is having a common goal be something other than like a materialistic thing, or, you know, making yourself better than, or like a competition really. Like if everyone's working together and they're coming from a place of love and compassion and empathy, and they really like can connect with one another, I think there's a much bigger power in that. And I really wanted to emphasize the idea of empathy and really understanding each other and really like taking the time to do that. And it's not that complicated. It's actually like quite simple. I mean, I look at my dog and I like I like want to cry sometimes, because there's something about like when I'm really connected to someone that's very emotional for me. And so I think maybe that's why people get kind of afraid of like that feeling. But I think at our core existence, like I said, humans, we're meant to thrive, we're meant to be happy, we're meant to like really live in harmony with everything around us. And I think as far as like any concerns about building the community, I think it would be, just there's always going to be arguments and indecision, and that's just a matter of, that's how we are. We're humans. We're not always going to agree on everything. But I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, is that you don't have to agree on everything. But it can be more of a conversation, like an open-hearted, open-minded conversation where you don't need to feel so judged. And I think that is probably the hardest part about building a community, is the fear of people not getting along, of there being drama, of there being like somebody wanting this to happen and then somebody wanting that to happen, or like it's just like the general human interaction. But that's just part of it. And I think if we can look at it, come from a place of love and understanding again, rather than trying to kind of like argue and fight with each other,